I've known Vincent since junior high school, and I have two things I remember that I want to add to this conglomerate of recollections. I remember when Vincent first got his driver's license, and he was like, "Oh, I've got $200. I want to get a motorcycle." And a neighbor down the street said, I had a little tiny, putt-putt motorcycle, all of 2 feet high, and he got to borrow it for a day to see if he wanted to buy it. And he was thrilled, and he was going to buy it. He was going to spend his money on it. And I just looked at him and I said, "Vincent, this is not the bike you want. This is not the memory of what you really want. This is a kid's bike. You want a real bike." And so he went out and got his Honda yellow lady. So that I remember, and wanted to say that. And it's not that I started him off on motorcycles, that was his thing, but I at least got him onto a bigger one to start. And the other thing I want to mention is that Vincent's work success so much in construction. He was obviously just amazing in that area of his life, along with all of his friendships and stuff. But I just want to give credit to my Uncle Brent, who is here and may have spoken, I don't know, but way back when, Vincent and my Uncle Brent and Steve Lindsay got together and bought a house in Highland Park. It's the Ash Street house. And they flipped it. It took them several years, but they constructed it, moved it, changed it, and eventually sold it. And that was the start of not only Vincent's career in construction, but Steve Lindsay's career also. And they've both gone on to be extreme successes in this. And the spark that started them off was my Uncle Brent Sewell.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the kinder, gentler side of Vincent. I mean, we all have a lot of memories, and I certainly have a lot of them. But there was one time in particular that I was thinking about for Vincent, and that was a time when we had a friend. She was a teenage girl who had some psychological problems, and she was admitted to the Gateway Hospital in Echo Park. And so we just decided, Vincent and I, that we'd go over and visit her. And when we got there, we spent a lot of time in the hospital meeting with a lot of the other people who were the patients that were there. And it didn't take long for us to realize that there are some really serious mental problems. They seemed normal, but at the same time you could also see that there were some things that were not quite right. So this individual that we went to go see, as soon as we met up with her, we realized the situation she was in. She felt that she was normal, but it was clear to us that there was things that were not quite right. She felt that she belonged on the outside, but she couldn't go out. And she was very concerned about what would happen to her when she's released from here. Will people accept her? Will they, think of her in the same way that they did before? And I was really impressed with the way that Vincent sort of took her aside and said, "Don't worry, we're always here for you. We will be here for you when you leave, and things are going to be okay." And just seeing the expression on her face, I remember how she was so assured from that statement. And I know that those weren't just empty words. Those were words that Vincent really meant, and he stood by them, because as soon as she was released, he continued to be a very good friend to hers. That was one of the moments where I realized, back at age 14 or so, that this was really a special person, that it wasn't just words, he really meant what he said. That's my memory, one of my many memories of Vincent.
I wanted to tell you kids, Mia, Jazz, and Dylan, about your dad. I'll start from the latest. I might talk for a while, so it might get boring. So, your dad called me up recently, and asked me to make these pendants for you guys. He didn't really ask me outright. He goes, "Where do you think I could get some of those? Something like dog tags." And he told me the messages that he wanted to give you, and it really choked me up. He was asking me, but he wasn't asking me. And of course, I'm going to say yes. He's Vincent, and so I'm going to say yes. And I just want to tell you, you know, what was going through my mind, how honored I was to make them, and how much that I hoped it would mean to you guys, that he'd give you this treasure and think of you, because he always thought about you guys. He always talked about you guys. And I really felt very honored to make them, and I hope you value them as not that they're the love that he had for you, but that they symbolize that. And from what everyone's told me, you do treasure them, and I love that. Something that you guys are very lucky about. My father died when he was 98. And my father was a mean guy too. And I think he stuck around that long so all his kids could figure out that he loved us. And I hope you guys know that Vincent loved you guys a lot. So I guess that's it about the dog tags and that, you know, but what Vincent was to me as a friend, a brother, he was a unique person. He was a man's man. You didn't want to introduce your girlfriends to him, you know, but he honored that. He did. He really did. If he knew it was your girlfriend, he wouldn't do that. Don't get the wrong idea. But he believed in a big family. He believed in extended family. Once you were his friend, you're his friend. If you did something wrong, he'd let you know in a nice way that didn't drive you away, and he'd say some things that, you know, somebody else said, boy, that guy could really piss me off. And sometimes we got over it, and sometimes we didn't, but we always remained brothers. And I think that's, you know, he always would come and get me. I was a guy, you know, wasn't a guy who went out and made friends. Vincent was a guy who went out and made friends. He came over to my house and made me his friend. And, you know, when we were kids, let's go sailing. George, let's go sailing. And then we go out to the beach on one of the best afternoons with everybody. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, I'm rambling, and I think I'm going to stop it right there. But he was a great guy, and I miss him. And I think about him a lot, and I hope that you guys will always do good and hold his memory and carry it on. Thank you.
Vincent was such a special person. He really was. And one of the things that made him so special is that he always made other people feel special. He every time, even though 10 years would go by between us being in contact, when I saw him, he just made me feel like I was the most special person in his life, or one of them. Anyway, very special to him. So he had such a loving nature, and he made everyone feel loved. And that's really what made him so special. And I knew him from the time we were like 13. He was my first boyfriend, or first real boyfriend. And he always reminded me of that, 40 years later, he reminded me of that, so I knew that was important to him too, that we were boyfriend and girlfriend early on. And then, when we had children, actually not such a similar time. I was away in Japan forever, but when I visited him several times in Hawaii. And one story I have is that I hadn't seen him for 7, 8, 9, 10 years because I was in Japan and he was in Hawaii, and I came to visit. He picked me up from the airport with Mia, and that was the first time I'd seen Mia. And driving home from the airport to their house, it was so clear what a great dad Vincent was with me.
He was strict, stricter than I was with my kids, but they obviously had such a great bond, and that was so great to see. And we drove up the driveway. You know, he had all these ways of opening the gate. They were all funny technical pulleys and things for opening the gate. It was all so cool and interesting. And we drove up the hill to his house, and he, you know, turned the car off, and he said, turned to me and said, "Tara," he said, "Tara, I am a success." And it was so wonderful, you know, because he was a success. He had a family that he was head over heels in love with. He had a wonderful business that he had created, you know, in spite of all his, you know, difficulties. He had created this business that was very successful, and he had a fabulous house and a fabulous life, exactly the life that he chose. And I was just so happy for him.